11Alive News starts now.
It is 2 o'clock on Tuesday, February 3rd. I'm Zach Merchant, the 11Alive Plus Streaming Center. If you have been with us, you just got done watching alongside with us and with much of the country as we tuned into a press conference from the Pima County Sheriff, Chris Nanos. That's Pima County, Arizona. It's the press conference on the latest in the ongoing investigation into the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, who is the 84-year-old mother of NBC News' Today Show co-anchor Savannah Guthrie. Her mother, Nancy, reported missing Sunday morning, last seen Saturday night. This was a chance for us to get the latest information from the sheriff, his office leading the investigation into this case. Details still limited, but let's recap what we do know and what we've learned in that press conference just moments ago. The sheriff saying that there were signs of forced entry at the home. Nancy Guthrie still not located. The sheriff did not identify a suspect at this point. The sheriff also said that investigators have processed the scene there in Arizona. They've collected what he described as copious amounts of evidence that has now been submitted for testing. He said including DNA testing. They are waiting for results to come back. At this point, the sheriff said another press conference would be likely to happen on Thursday morning local time unless, he stressed, some new information breaks that would warrant an update in this case from his office. Savannah Guthrie, the daughter of Nancy Guthrie, posting on social media describing her mother as, quote, a woman of deep conviction, a good and faithful servant. She went on to ask supporters to, quote, raise your prayers with us and believe with us that she will be lifted by them in this very moment. Bring her home. Again, that's the latest from Arizona right now in this ongoing case of the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, the 84-year-old mother of Savannah Guthrie. If you want to watch the full press conference from that Pima County Sheriff, that will be available. If it's not already right now, it will shortly be available on 11Alive Plus. We do want to turn now to other big developments, big news we are following today. That was the top story as we got into our 2 o'clock hour here, but we are also following an ongoing trial out of Clark County. This is the cold case murder trial of Tara Baker, a 23-year-old University of Georgia law student who was killed in 2001. The case went cold for decades. Prosecutors now believe they know who committed the crime. They have charged a man, Edric Faust, with murder in this case. That trial began yesterday with opening statements. It continues today. Faust has pleaded not guilty. The defense and the prosecution with very different stories that they are now telling before a Clark County Superior Court judge and a jury. We'll bring you more from that case coming up in just a bit. We're also tracking a big new development in the Georgia governor's race, a jolt to the GOP primary. Rick Jackson, who is a healthcare entrepreneur, a longtime conservative donor in Georgia with deep pockets. Today, he made a surprise announcement. He is entering the Republican race for governor. According to a press release from his nascent campaign, he has loaned his campaign $50 million and has lined up, or is in the process of lining up, $40 million in what the campaign is describing as an initial ad buy to introduce Georgia voters to Rick Jackson. We'll have much more on that story and this developing political news that has sent a big surprise and a big jolt into this Republican primary that already features 3 prominent statewide candidates on the Republican side. And we are also tracking an ongoing challenge in Georgia, the challenge of chronic absenteeism in our public schools. There is a Georgia State economics professor who's been studying this issue. We'll have a live interview with him coming up in just a bit. But of course, we're going to start here with Melissa Nord, meteorologist Melissa Nord, always a friend of the streaming center on a busy day. And you have an update for us on some things that we should be getting ready for as we head into the spring weather months.
You know, some rain, not some snow coming in this time, so we could have a pretty kind of wet commute first thing tomorrow morning, but this is not going to be a winter weather event for us. That's something to be thankful for. And we actually have a drought, so rain is a good thing, as they say in world country music. Let me show you outside right now, though. It is a bright day today. We started off with blue skies this morning. Clouds have been building in, but they've been taking their sweet time. And with that, we've made it warmer than we have in the last week. We're already up to about 56 here in Atlanta. Showers are moving back in this evening. This is the radar, which shows you back in Huntsville where that rain is. So by the time we fast forward to about 4 o'clock, so when we're back on 11 Alive with 11 Alive News at 4, after you are done with your wonderful programming on 11 Live Plus, we'll have that rain in our northwestern suburbs, at least northwestern counties. Then it'll be moving through this evening and overnight. And that's what this forecast track shows. You see at 11 o'clock tonight, 10 o'clock tonight, widespread rain. And tomorrow morning is looking a little bit wetter as well. So this is an adjustment to the timeline that what we showed you yesterday. Now it looks like the rain holds off in Atlanta until after 6 p.m., but it may linger through all of Wednesday morning before finally tapering off after your lunch hour. Rain amounts have also gone up a little bit. Here's our model on that. You can see rain amounts about a half an inch on average. We will take it. We'll also take the warmer air that's coming in behind this rainfall. So here's the forecast track. You see there at 9 o'clock tonight, we have rain moving from West Georgia into the metro. And then by the overnight, it's kind of a nice sleeping weather. It's in the 40s. It's raining lightly. You'll hear it on the roof, but it's not like storming. We don't have really strong winds. So it's nice, calm, nuisance rain moving through. 5 o'clock, it's still here. We'll track more of that rain pressing up from the south for kind of mid-morning to early afternoon. Then it clears, and then we are dry and we are smooth sailing all the way into the weekend. You see those rain chances, they've actually increased to 60% for tomorrow. Ooh, 58 degrees.
Look at that.
It is nice.
That is very nice.
Kind of feels like a heat wave.
Compared to what we've had.
Yeah, it was in the 20s on Saturday. During the afternoon, 30s on Sunday, so 50s don't feel that bad. Rain comes in here by 8 o'clock tonight, and then it's out here by 8 p.m. tomorrow. And then here's the temperatures that follow. A cool down coming, so by Thursday, we'll trade those upper 50s, right around 60 for the mid 40s for high temperatures. Now, we're getting ready for Super Bowl weekend. As a teaser, the weekend is looking dry. We had
good news, Melissa.
3 weekends of back-to-back winter weather. And then at the start of the year, we had severe weather. We always say in January, it's either like 60 or 70 degrees and we have severe weather, or we have winter weather and cold weather. And this year we had a little bit of both. Now we're in a new month of February. The weekend does look dry. We'll talk more about that ahead at 3 o'clock. And also at 2:30, I know it's been cold outside, but this week is Severe Weather Preparedness Week. So coming up at 2:30 today, today's Thunderstorm Safety Day. We've got a lot of knowledge to drop here on 11 Live Plus.
And this is really important stuff. I want to underscore that. Melissa.
And you and I have chatted about this before, but it pays off so much
Yeah.
to do the prep work now. What you don't want to do is be caught off guard, surprised when, God forbid, something severe is headed your way.
Well, and you don't want to panic, and you also don't want to be to the point where you wake up in the middle of the night and hear a storm on your doorstep. You want to be alerted, know how to get alerted, and where to go to take shelter. So we'll go through more of that today at 2:30.
A good way to ease the anxiety is to make a plan now. Melissa Nord, we're looking forward to that in just a little bit. We're going to turn now to an ongoing story, and a heartbreaking one, out of Gwinnett County. You heard over the weekend as we reported that 2 Gwinnett County police officers were shot in the line of duty. Master Police Officer David Reed wounded. At last report, he was in critical but stable condition. Officer Pradeep Tamang was killed in the line of duty. You see him now on your screen, and we have just learned in about the last hour or so details about a public memorial service that will be held to honor Officer Tamang. It's going to happen this Saturday. The service will take place at 12 Stone Church in Lawrenceville. Attendees are asked to be seated by 9:30 a.m. Tamang joined the Gwinnett County Police Department in July of 2024, graduated from the 121st Police Academy in May. And again, this is a story that we have been following here on 11 Alive and 11 Alive Plus. This shooting happened on Sunday over the weekend. And the suspect in the shooting, identified as Kevin Andrews, a 35-year-old, reportedly shot the officers and then was shot himself. Andrews facing what are described as non-life-threatening injuries. He was arrested and charged over the weekend.
And this was a situation that the police chief described as an unprovoked attack that followed police responding to a hotel. The police chief says that the suspect invited the officers into the room and then opened fire. And again, if you're just joining us, you see on the screen now Officer Pradeep Tamang killed in the line of duty over the weekend. His public memorial service has now been scheduled for this weekend on Saturday. You can find all those details on our website, 11Alive Plus, and we will continue to follow this story as people not just in Gwinnett County but across the state continue to pay tribute to Officer Tamang. We're going to turn now to another story we have been tracking on 11Alive Plus for the last few days. That is the ongoing cold case murder trial of Tara Baker, who was that UGA law student, a 23-year-old, who was found dead in 2001. Prosecutors now say, after the case had gone cold for decades, they now say they know who committed the crime. They say it was Edric Faust. Faust has pleaded not guilty. Prosecutors, the defense attorneys, have very different stories that they are telling to a Clark County Superior Court judge and a jury. That case, that trial, is ongoing right now. Our Marissa Sarbach has been following the case today, joins us now. Marissa, bring us up to speed. What were the big developments today? And for people who maybe are not so familiar with how things have played out over the last 36 hours, tell us how we got here.
Yeah, so Zach, yesterday we started with opening statements. Today we've transitioned into testimony, and we're talking about from the side of the prosecution. So far this morning, we've heard from the medical examiner from the case. We've heard from Tara Baker's best friend, and we've also heard from a 911 call center operator. So we've caught up a little bit this morning. The court just at last check looked like it was just coming back from lunch recess. But we've heard so much from the testimony. The medical examiner's was certainly the longest. He talked about not only the murder of Tara Baker, but also evidence of sexual assault and also of her body being burned in her apartment back in that Athens apartment in 2021. So a lot to catch up on today.
These were really grisly details. Yeah. If you were following the testimony today, do you have any sense of what the defense may be planning to present to the jury down the line in defense of Faust?
The defense at this point has tried to, in opening statements, talk about how they're arguing that this, at this point, couldn't have been Faust. They're saying that they're pointing the fingers back at Tara Baker's boyfriend, Chris Melton. He was originally a prime suspect in this case decades ago, but the police at no point did they charge him. He was just a prime suspect. So that's something that they're focusing on. They also are focusing on the fact that there's no fingerprints, no eyewitnesses. They're saying there is no direct evidence tying their client, Edric Faust, to the murder of Tara Baker.
And this is a trial, we are told, that could take several weeks in Clark County Superior Court. It took several decades, 2+ decades, to get to this point. Have prosecutors or law enforcement given any indication so far as to what unlocked the case for them? Because it obviously was stalled for so long.
DNA evidence has been pivotal for them. They, at this point in 2023 into 2024, were able to bring new evidence out from new technology with DNA, and they were able to actually, what they said is isolate a male portion of DNA in the crime scene DNA that they found from Tara Baker. So they were able to separate that, and they say they can see Tara Baker's DNA as well as male DNA, which they're saying is a, get this, Zach, 1 in 800 quadrillion chance it is not Edric Faust.
That'll be up to the jury to parse all of that, and a big task for the jurors too, because they're going to have to sort out not only the witness testimony, but a lot of scientific and forensic evidence as well. I understand, Marissa, that we have some audio from some of the proceedings today. Is this a good time to listen in?
Yeah, go ahead, take a listen. This is Tara Baker's best friend talking about the night that she saw her, the night before her murder. She says that she is actually the last person to see and hear from Tara.
Were you supposed to do anything when you got home?
Yes, I was supposed to call her when I got home, and I did not.
All right. And so did you receive a phone call that evening?
Yes, she called me about 9:30, maybe 9:45, and then she admonished me, scolded me because I had failed to call her, but I just didn't mean anything bad. I just forgot.
Okay. Do you need a cup of water or a moment?
Have some. Thank you so
There's
much.
some tissues over there beside you if you see them and need them. Is that the last time you ever talked to Tara?
Yeah. I think the last thing she ever said to me was that I said hello, and she said, "You did not call me." And I said, "I know, I'm so sorry." And she said, "But you're okay?" I said, "I am." And she said, "All right, I'll talk to you tomorrow." And that was kind of it.
So when you say I'll talk to you tomorrow, this is Thursday night.
Yes.
So tomorrow would be Friday, January 19th, 2001. Is that right?
Yes.
Testimony there and the weight of those years, 20 plus years waiting for that moment to be able to testify in open court. Marissa, for people who have not been following this all the way through, have been listening in as you have, is that what jurors have been seeing throughout the day?
The medical examiner's case was more discussing facts of what he found on the body, so I wouldn't say it was as emotional. This one was really the emotional testimony. The 911 call operator kind of, again, detailing, same thing as the medical examiner, facts that came from the case that she found as that went on, but the emotional testimony really is what you heard. Tara's best friend talking about the night before her murder when they were studying together in the law school library and never hearing from her again after that.
I mean, at the start of their lives. 23 years old,
Yeah.
Tara Baker, I believe a first-year student at
Yep.
UGA Law.
And hours before her 24th birthday.
Ugh. This is a tough case to follow. We know that you were going to stay on top of it. Marissa, and I understand too, that court, which has been on recess, is likely headed back into session shortly. And I'm actually looking at the live feeds right now. Marissa, we're going to let you go so you can keep a close eye on that. And we may see more of you later on this afternoon as you continue to track this story.
Thanks, Zach.
Thanks, Marissa. All right, we're going to take a quick break here, and when we come back, we're going to be talking to a Georgia State University professor who is studying the problem of chronic absenteeism in our schools and, critically, looking for solutions. That's next.
What's this guy's name?
Welcome back in. It is no secret that Georgia's schools and schools around the country have struggled with the challenge of chronic absenteeism, and it has become even more challenging since the COVID pandemic, the issue of students not showing up for school, not attending, and frequently not attending. It is a challenge that families, communities, school districts have been battling. We have Professor Tim Sass now joining us. He is a Georgia State University professor. Professor, can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. Thank you.
Thanks for making the time to be with us. I know that you and I believe a few colleagues have really been working to drill down on this issue of chronic absenteeism, looking for the root causes, and importantly, identify solutions. Can you tell us at the 30,000-foot view a little bit about your work?
Sure. So, as you mentioned, that since the return of students to classes after the end of the pandemic, chronic absenteeism has been a big problem throughout the metro area and Georgia and the U.S. We were approached by Fulton County Schools to take a look at a pilot program they initiated to try and address the issue. And what they did was to offer students a sort of second chance bus ride in the morning. So if a student didn't show up for school, then they would get a notification, be it by text or email, or in some cases, personalized phone calls. And then the district sent around a school bus along the normal route, starting at about 9:15, to pick up students that didn't make it to school.
It was almost you described it as a second chance bus. I think it was in the literature I read, it was called the attendance recovery bus, and it was effectively, if a student doesn't make it onto the bus at the normal pickup time, faculty, staff, school administrators would put the word out that you got to send that bus back around and try to get that student another shot at getting into the classroom, right?
That's right. And the pilot was done in 2 elementary schools in the South Fulton area. Prior research shows that improvements in attendance over the last couple of years have been uneven. Schools in more affluent areas have seen a much greater improvement in absenteeism than schools serving areas where there's high rates of poverty. So Fulton County Schools wanted to pilot this recovery bus in 2 South Fulton schools. And that began at the end of January 2025. And we work with the district to try and evaluate the impact of that recovery bus.
What did you find? Was the recovery bus program effective?
Unfortunately, no. We compared students in the 2 pilot schools with students in other South Fulton elementary schools. And before the pilot, the attendance rate tracked along very similar with these 2 schools having somewhat higher rates of absenteeism, but followed the same sort of pattern. And then after the recovery bus program started, we didn't see any improvement. If anything, the gap between these 2 pilot schools and other South Fulton elementaries seemed to widen a bit. So unfortunately, it didn't have a significant improvement in attendance for the schools in the pilot program.
Professor, let me ask you just a couple more questions on this front, and then I want to let you go because I know you're doing important work at Georgia State and on an important topic here when we're talking about kids and their education and their access to education. I would be remiss if I did not raise this question. I'm sure others who are watching may be thinking of this too. Given the scope of the challenge of absenteeism and students missing school, this recovery bus program only happened in 2 elementary schools. It was fairly limited. Is there a chance that because of the limited scope that skewed the results at all?
Well, that's possible. It's a small sample, but also the district intentionally picked these 2 schools because they had high rates of absenteeism. So one would think that if the program was going to be effective, it would be in these schools. And what we found was that the recovery bus wasn't used very much. typical day, maybe 10, 12 kids between the two schools were picked up on this recovery bus. Some days as high as 20, but it wasn't used very often. About a third of the kids that rode the bus only rode it once during the spring semester. So I think that was part of the problem. Is just there wasn't much take up from the students.
Professor, do you have a sense of, and I want to ask you these last two questions. They're somewhat in tandem, but I want to ask them one by one to avoid confusing myself here. But do you have a sense of what the main driving factors of chronic absenteeism are?
Well, it's hard to pick one or two. There's a lot of factors. Some of the most important things seem to be that if parents are made aware that their child is missing school more than other kids, seems to matter. Transportation does seem to be an issue that people talk about. And then more generally, there's at least some suggestive evidence that people's attitudes toward the importance of attendance has changed. During the pandemic, obviously, kids were learning remotely, and it seems like there's less of an emphasis on attendance. There's less engagement with school amongst many students. So that could be the overriding factor.
Professor, last question for you, and I know this is a complex area, and I know you and your team are researching it. The recovery bus in your findings was not all that effective. You laid out some of the driving factors of the problem. Do you have any sense of different programs, different initiatives that may have a chance of more successfully addressing this absenteeism problem?
Yeah, I think there's some evidence, and in fact, work that we did at Georgia State prior to the pandemic, that having personalized messages to students and their parents, letting them know not only that their child missed school, but also how often they're missing school and how that compares to other students. That some parents seem unaware that their student is missing a lot of class relative to other students. So we think information is an important factor, but there's a lot we still don't know about the absenteeism problem, and more work to be done.
Professor Tim Sass, Georgia State University, thanks for your work on this topic, and thank you for your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, we're going to turn now to another story that we are watching. You're looking at a live picture here from the Tara Baker cold case murder trial ongoing right now in Athens, Clark County. This is a live view inside of Clark County Superior Court, where a case that is more than 2 decades in the making has finally made its way in front of a jury. This is a murder case. Prosecutors, after decades of investigating this case, the case had gone cold. They now believe they know who killed UGA law student Tara Baker back in 2001. We're gonna take a quick listen in to the testimony here for just a moment.
Any objection, Mr. Cruz? It's admitted.
And then as to State's Exhibit 43, what is that?
That's a photograph of the damage to the front door that was made upon entry.
All right, this appear to be fair and accurate depiction.
It does.
Move to tender 43, Judge.
Any objection, Mr. Cruz? It is admitted.
And 44, what is that?
44 is a photograph of the interior towards the right as you walk in to the 160 Fawn Drive. It shows the living room area.
Thank you. Does that appear to be a fair and accurate depiction?
It does.
Move to tender 44, Your Honor.
Any objection, Mr. Cruz? It is admitted.
And
All right, that is a live picture that we are tracking. We have been watching along in real time together as we enter day 2 of this ongoing murder trial in the case of the killing of 23-year-old UGA law student Tara Baker. We're going to continue to follow every development in this case Right now, we are going to turn to our Joe Ripley, who joins us now in the 11Alive Plus Streaming Center. Joe, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. It's good to be here side by side with you, Zach.
It's good to have you in, and you're doing some important work. You are tracking the West Side Redevelopment Project, which has been a project that's getting a lot of attention and has been in the works for some time.
Fitting too, Zach, for Black History Month. We're talking about the west side of Atlanta. For those who may not be familiar, it starts right after North Side Drive there. Once you get into the Vine City, into English Avenue neighborhoods, the west side, Martin Luther King Jr. Drive area, Joseph E. Lowry Boulevard, for those who may be familiar with the city here. We're talking about an area that is so rich in culture and history, Zach, especially Black history. Icons like John Lewis walked and did business, lived on these very streets. And over the years, it has become run down. You know, some businesses have vacated. It's not once the prominent, bustling neighborhood that it once was. But some community leaders are working very hard to try and change that. And here's how. Revitalizing a neighborhood doesn't start with a promise. It doesn't start with new development or freshly paved streets. Leona Barr Davenport says it starts with the people.
We hope to change the mindset of people in this community.
Barr Davenport is president and CEO of the Atlanta Business League, one of the organizations pushing for change on the west side of Atlanta. She's working with developers to transform the old Ashby Theater on MLK Drive in hopes of preserving the area's rich history of culture.
Well, what we're talking about doing in this area is something that kind of, helps me re-see, and I think will help the community see the economic engine that this corridor can be.
From those who grew up in the area, like Milton Jones, to those with a growing appreciation, like restoration expert Jay Scott.
This area is extremely historic, extremely important in American history, not just civil rights and Black American history. It really represents the push for freedom.
Activism, higher education, entrepreneurship, and financial stability, they're what once made this area sing. While some of the notes have faded over time, there's renewed commitment to composing a new song.
So we really want to preserve and heighten that history that we have here on this corridor and the universities and everything that's around.
History and more opportunities standing side by side. Barr Davenport says they'll bring renewed pride back to the west side.
So our goal is to be an impact in the community, to be a hub where business owners can come and gather and learn.
And this revitalization, Zach, will really take place at the Ashby Street Theater. It first opened in 1934.
A lot of history there.
A lot of history there. It used to be one of the only theaters in the city, at least on that part of town, that Black people could go to watch a movie, sometimes months after new releases would come out. So a vital importance to that neighborhood, but now, over the next 5 years or so, they're planning to invest about $15 million to build that theater back up. It won't be a movie theater when it's redone. It will be more of a business hub, also a museum, to cherish and really preserve that history.
Joe, you talk about and really thoughtfully wove the history, the change, and this look at the hopeful future for this historic part of our city in that story you just shared with us. You talk about the theater. What other specifics have been unveiled in this plan to revitalize the area?
Well, one is something we've heard a lot about, Zach, and that's affordable housing. The mayor of Atlanta, Andre Dickens, has spoken ad nauseum and really a lot about how he plans to institute 20,000 affordable units of housing, and he sees a lot of opportunity on the south side and on the west side. These are areas that over time have been underinvested, and so with a lot of people growing up in those areas, calling it home, they've seen a lot of change. A lot of people are worried that they may be left out of that change, but after speaking with a lot of those leaders there, a lot of people who grew up there in that community, they are doubling down saying, we are committing to bringing affordable housing here and also businesses back to this area because, as we know, the circulating dollar in those communities helps keep them alive.
It seems from all that you've reported here that this effort at its heart comes from people who live and work in the neighborhood. This is a homegrown effort. How much buy-in is there? And you mentioned Mayor Andre Dickens, but how much buy-in is there from city leaders and state leaders?
I think there's a lot of buy-in here. You see Marcy Collier Overstreet, who actually just took the reins as president of Atlanta City Council, who calls Southwest Atlanta home. That area is very near and dear to her heart. The mayor, also growing up in Southwest Atlanta, so they know, they have seen over the decades the disinvestment in that area. They see a lot of promise with major events like the World Cup coming here, a lot of other major sporting events such as the Final Four, the Super Bowl, that Atlanta, we say we're full, right? But there are specifically areas where there's still a lot of potential, and they see that on the west side because some of these rundown buildings, vacant buildings that we've seen over time, there's new opportunities, and like you said, that homegrown effort to build a workforce here, train them, and keep them here, not necessarily have them go to other cities for work or that training, but to train them right here in the city of Atlanta, give them opportunities that they haven't had before, maybe their parents didn't have before, and keep them home to build a new generation of Atlantans that can proudly call this place home.
Joe, you brought up something I want to ask you, last conversation point here on this topic today, at least in this half hour, because we could talk about this for a long time. The history of Atlanta, the progress, the folks who, some neighborhoods didn't get to participate in all of the progress that some other parts of our city did. I think this is a place to end it. You brought up the World Cup. You brought up the fact that Atlanta continues to grow. We're seeing big sporting events. When there is big investment in areas, when you see these big events come, when we are bracing for, getting ready for, depending on how you're looking at it, the World Cup this summer, how do local leaders plan to and hope the city and state will honor the history and balance the newness? Because there's a fine balance when you're talking about historic areas you want to develop, but I would suspect that folks who've called this neighborhood home for a long time don't want whatever comes next to look nothing like what it has been for generations.
Right. There's this historic charm, right, that draws people to Atlanta. It's what brought big events like the World Cup here. They see that Atlanta is not only growing, but they see the history, being the cradle of the civil rights movement, being a hub for culture, music, and quite frankly, influence here. Atlanta influences everything. It's true, not just on, that global scale, but, really zoom in and you can see, how much pride people have in Atlanta. And so I think the city leaders, the state leaders recognize that, we've got the world's busiest airport. We've got so many attractions and amenities that let's keep that what it is. Let's keep that local charm while also trying to attract new business because of what the past has brought us to.
Or Joe Ripley doing what you and you only do so well, telling these stories of the neighborhoods that make our city what it is.
It is my privilege and pleasure, Zach.
Joe, thanks for being here with us, man.
Good to be here with you.
All right, we're going to take a turn now to look at this live image that you and I are getting pretty acquainted with here. This is a live look at Blue Ridge. A couple days ago, it looked more like snow globe. This hill here had snow, and it was looking very cold. Today, a different picture. That looks like a much drier road. That's what we like to see. It looks a little warmer today, too, but I'm not the expert on these things. I just look at what the picture shows me. Good news, we have a real expert back with us again, Melissa Nord. Did I get that right? Is it warmer in Blue Ridge now?
It is a lot warmer, and so it's very appropriate with warmer weather. We can start talking about severe weather. Not this week, but severe weather prepared this week. So that's what I want to talk about here in this segment because, each and every year, every single month of the calendar, Zach, we can have severe weather. We can have tornadoes in January, the coldest month of the year. We can have them in February, March, April, May, doesn't matter. And this week we're talking about throughout the week ways that you need to be prepared for different types of active weather. And today is Thunderstorm Safety Day. So I want to talk about thunderstorms, how we get thunderstorms, what the ingredients we need for severe thunderstorms, and then what you need to know about sheltering from those storms. So, you need 4 different ingredients to come together to make severe weather. You need wind shear, which is changing with wind speed or wind direction with height. We need something to lift that air up and make the clouds, which is often a cold front coming in. We need instability. We call that CAPE. That means if it's hotter, we have more instability. It's hotter, there's more potential energy for storms to fire up and rapidly explode. And then we need moisture, those dew points to go up. So in the springtime, we see this intersection between the warm air, that wind shear, and that lift often. That's why we have a severe weather season in the spring. March, April, and May. And May was one of those unusual months last year because we had the most number of tornadoes on record in May for the North Georgia area. Now, when we track severe weather events, we show you these outlooks in advance. These are our Storm Prediction Center outlets. And they have different colors on them, but they basically mean different things. At level 1 threat, we just see a low chance of isolated severe storms, but you can see that the table on the left side of the screen, the darker the color, the higher the category, the higher the risk of number of severe storms and the intensity of those severe storms go up. So we see in a level 3 risk, the risk of, a stronger tornado or larger hail or stronger wind gusts become part of the equation as well. So where do you shelter? When do you shelter? Well, where you shelter depends on what your home looks like. When we have severe storms that are just 60 miles an hour or greater for winds, we just want you to be on the bottom floor of your house, away from the windows, away from the doors. And when you take that shelter is when you're under a warning. So a watch means that the conditions are out there. It's like when you're going to bake a cake. You got to get out the flour, you got to get out the sugar, you need the eggs, you need the, whatever oil of choice that you have, or if you use applesauce instead of oil because you're trying to be healthy. That means you have the ingredients there, but you don't actually have a cake in front of you. A warning is when you actually have your cake out of the oven, you're going to eat your cake. It's there. So a warning means that the severe weather is either happening right now or it's imminent, and that's when you would take shelter. Now, what's interesting is we actually have different categories of severe thunderstorm warnings. You have your baseline, but then you have these considerable and destructive severe thunderstorm warnings. Have you ever been alerted by an Amber Alert on your phone, Zach?
I sure have.
Have you ever been alerted by a tornado warning on your phone?
I certainly feel like I have been.
Probably, if you have the Amber Alerts turned on. So your alerts can also alert you when you're going to have one of those destructive severe thunderstorm warnings. So if the winds are 80 miles an hour or greater, or if you have hail of at least baseball size, which is unheard of here almost, we get those alerts triggered on your phone. So hail sizes, look at this.
Jeez.
You can measure them with a ruler, or if you don't have a ruler at your house and it hails, if you have one of these objects, you can place it next to a hailstone, and then you know how big the hail is. You can't just say it's marble size, because you got small marbles, large marbles. Who plays marbles these days?
Who does? I don't.
I only found marbles at my grandparents' house from when my dad was a kid back in the 50s and 60s.
You know what? I wouldn't want marble-sized hail. I'm looking at this. Every time you come over here to the streaming center, you show us something on screen that really gets my attention. This graphic, these hail sizes can, and I'm not saying this is what we see in Georgia a lot, but I can't even imagine what a tennis ball-sized hailstorm would look like.
Well, your windshield would be shattered.
I don't want to imagine.
Shattered.
I don't want to imagine the insurance claims after that.
But the point of that is, though, that when we see these larger hail events or more intense wind events, that's when they can issue these alerts on your phone. So I want you to have multiple ways to get warnings. That was my weather clicker I was moving. No weather radio is a great way, especially in the middle of the night. It's like tried, true. It's always going to work. The 11Alive app is a fabulous feature, the phone app. Thank you for watching us on the TV app right now as well. But on the phone, we can send you push alerts. You can put in your county, so it's like geolocated with when you actually get under a warning. So that, and then, I also have the American Red Cross app on my phone at the same time, so I get double warnings. So I want you to have those ways to get warnings so you know when you don't just have the ingredients for your cupcakes or your cake, you have an actual cake or severe thunderstorm heading to your house. So that's today's topic, is thunderstorm safety, hail and the winds, and then tomorrow we'll touch base on tornado safety. Tomorrow there is a statewide drill that's supposed to happen at 9:30 in the morning. They may delay that because of the rain. Whenever there's rain or something on radar, they don't want people to freak out that there's actually a tornado coming. So that will TBD if that happens tomorrow, if they push it back to Thursday.
Can I ask you one question?
Sure.
I know you are busy. You're juggling a lot. But you talk about not wanting to do the tornado drill on a day where there's anything on the rain. You don't want to scare folks, particularly young people. There is, and I'm sure you get people reaching out to you about this, some people have real
Right.
weather anxiety. They have
Yeah.
storm anxiety, young people and grown-ups too. How much does the preparation work, this conversation that we are having,
Right.
how much can that help alleviate the anxiety and the fear? And I mean, I've seen it. I've seen folks who really, you get those Georgia spring days when the sky is that
Yeah.
kind of deep color and you just feel in the air some storm is coming. People can get really anxious.
They
How do you
can.
alleviate that?
Especially if they've been through a storm. I think that's where a lot of the anxiety comes. They have a memory from their past. Either they've lived through a tornado that went through close to their, neighborhood 2 Christmases ago. 2 days after Christmas, there was a tornado 1 house over from my house.
You're kidding.
No, we were in Florida.
Were you guys,
So-
I mean, was the house okay?
We were okay. Our neighbors, they had the front, smashed in by a big tree.
Oh, my
But,
goodness.
people have fears of the weather often because of experience, and it's kind of like PTSD. So having your plan ready to go, that's one way. But I also think that staying informed can sometimes help those anxieties. And that's one of the great tools with 11Alive Plus. And we have this whole streaming studio dedicated to weather. I mean, we're in the streaming studio now, but there's a weather streaming studio in addition to that, where even if there's not a tornado warning, we're on your TV on 11Alive Plus as those storms come in, so you can watch us as they're coming in. We have live radar. Then you have tools like the app on your phone, which can alert you when you're under one of those warnings. But I think preparation helps to ease some of that anxiety, Zach.
And you guys do a really great job of that too. I mean, you talk about being on TV. You are. It always feels like to me you're on our team. You're tracking the stuff
Right.
all the time. I know I'm watching always.
We shift our schedules around. We know something's going to be here because we always want somebody here to give you the information you need. So throughout the week, we're going to go through more of those topics. I think the key, though, is preparation, and that way you're not panicking when you need to take action.
We are going to continue this important conversation throughout the week. Melissa
Sure.
Nord, thank you as always. And we are going to take a quick break right now. We will see you on the other side in just a few minutes. Welcome back in. We're going to take you now to an important conversation that happened right here in the 11Alive Plus studio, the streaming studio, just a little bit earlier today. Our own Aisha Howard talked with Gerald Griggs, the leader of Georgia's NAACP, about Black History Month, 100 years of Black History Month, which is marked this year, 2026. And Gerald Griggs and his colleagues' efforts to keep Black history alive in Georgia.
Georgia's own credit union celebrates Black History Month with its iconic downtown sign today. The artwork is titled Handle with Care and features the faces of civil rights icons Madam C.J. Walker and John Wesley Dobbs. Black History Month is a time to reflect on the achievements, sacrifices, and impact of Black Americans who shared this country. Now here in Georgia, and especially in Atlanta, that history isn't too distant. It's alive in our churches, campuses, neighborhoods, and ongoing fights for equality. Let's dive a little bit deeper into this with Georgia NAACP President Gerald Griggs. Welcome to you this morning. So let's start here. When you look at the state of the country right now, how does Black History Month feel especially relevant for you?
I think it's most poignant at this moment that the country is experiencing because it lifts up the work of individuals who have not been elevated and celebrated the way they should. So I think it's pivotal to celebrate Black History Month in the current state. You know, we're at the 100th anniversary of the celebration of Black History Month, and I think it's apropos considering the accomplishments of African Americans throughout this country, and we have to highlight those.
You feel like the history and the meaning of Black History Month has changed since you first became involved in civil rights work?
I think it's become stronger. I think, you know, over the last few years, especially during the Black Lives Matter movement, there's been a re-emergence of celebration of our history, not just the figures that we know, but the figures that were unsung and those that remain nameless. So I think it's more important because of the re-energization of the movement recently.
So we know Georgia sits at the center of civil rights history, right? And Atlanta is often called the birthplace of the modern civil rights movement. Do you think we live up to that legacy today in the work that we're doing?
I think many individuals do, but I think as a collective, we need to do better. Our ancestors left us a long mantle of history in this city and around the country that we have to live up to. We have to stand up to the moment. And I think by celebrating our history and remembering that history, we get the energy and the intelligence and knowledge to do that. So I think we still have a ways to go, but I think we are making our ancestors proud.
What do you think gets lost when Black History Month is treated as symbolic instead of more substantive?
I think it's lost that this is a pivotal portion of American history. Black history is American history. And so I think that many of the majority community don't recognize the innovation, the relevance of this particular month, and don't celebrate it the way our community does. This is about celebrating America, the greatness of America, the contributions of Black Americans to make this country great. So I think that's what's left out and what's missing in these celebrations.
So how do you think the strategy of organizing changed in the social media era? I know social media was such a big part of the Black Lives Matter movement in 2020, but looking at it today, how has the strategy of organizing changed with social media now being on the scene in such a big way?
I think it's evolving. I think we're hearing more of the voices of those that are unsung. We're able to see the struggle across the globe as opposed to seeing it nationally. And we're also able to connect one with another to tell those unsung stories of individuals who were not lifted up in the previous movement. So I think that social media has allowed us to organize at a level that we haven't seen in hundreds of years. And I'm appreciative of the voices of the young people elevating the stories of those that are unsung.
It really struck a chord with me, the theme that Georgia's credit union is using to go with that mural today on the banner in the building, Handle with Care. What does that mean to you, and what gives you hope as we look toward the future?
I think it means that given the attacks that are happening on diversity, equity, inclusion, and the erasure of Black history, we have to handle this precious jewel with care. I mean, there are so many innovations and so many things that have happened in American history because of African Americans that we cannot erase that. And I think what it means going forward is being intentional in the celebration of diversity, in the celebration of Black excellence, in the celebration of what it truly means to be American and to be a Black American. So I think it's apropos to say handle with care because it's a precious jewel that we have to nurture.
And celebrating one aspect of our history does not erase other parts of our history as well. Gerald Griggs, Georgia NAACP president, always glad to have you on, and a happy Black History Month to you, sir. Thanks for being with us.
An important conversation, and one of many we will continue to have here on 11Alive and on 11Alive Plus. We want to turn now to developing news that we have continued to track here on 11Alive Plus, and I suspect you have been watching right alongside us, many around the country, following this troubling case of the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, the 84-year-old mother of Today Show co-anchor Savannah Guthrie. She was last seen, according to authorities, on Saturday, reported missing on Sunday. The Pima County Sheriff in Arizona delivered a press conference at about 1:30, so about 90 minutes ago, but did not deliver too many new details other than to say that the scene had been processed at the home and that a number of pieces of potential evidence had been sent to a crime lab for evaluation and for testing for possible DNA evidence. We want to turn now to a story from NBC's Liz Kreutz, who has been tracking this case as the search continues for Nancy Guthrie.
Well, hey there are still so many more questions than answers right now with this search for Nancy Guthrie now entering its third day. The sheriff's office says that they do believe Nancy Guthrie was taken from her home in the middle of the night against her will. They say it is fair to characterize this as a kidnapping or an abduction. They say that at the home, which they're now calling a crime scene, they found her cell phone that was left behind. Her car was also there, and they are asking anybody in the public for any kind of information, surveillance video that could help give them some kind of timeline or information about when this happened or any kind of suspect. In fact, they said a big challenge has been getting video because of the neighborhood landscaping. The homes are set back from the street. They're on these large lots. There's high, tall brush blocking many of the homes, all of that making it very hard to get ring camera footage that has a direct line of sight from the street. And the sheriff told us that while they have received many tips from the neighborhood, they do not have any solid lead at this time. The sheriff is calling this a race against time because of the fact that Nancy Guthrie has that medication she needs to take every 24 hours, or it could potentially be fatal. Overnight, Savannah Guthrie posted, she asked for prayers and said her family believes in the power of prayer, hoping that they can bring her home. Back to you.
And we continue to follow the developments in this troubling case, again, of the disappearance of Savannah Guthrie's mother, Nancy Guthrie, Savannah Guthrie. And you heard Liz reference this, but I want to read you some direct quotes from that statement that Savannah released about her mother. She described her mom as a, quote, a woman of deep conviction, a good and faithful servant. And she went on to ask supporters to, quote, raise your prayers with us and believe with us that she will be lifted by them in this very moment. Bring her home. And you heard in Liz's report, time is of the essence as authorities say that Nancy Guthrie needs her medicine. She has now been missing for several days. Last seen Saturday evening, reported missing on Sunday. The search for Nancy Guthrie continues. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back into the 11Alive Plus Streaming Center. It is just after 3 o'clock on Tuesday, February 3rd. I'm Zach Merchant, and we are tracking a lot of big and currently developing stories. Let's get you up to speed. The latest on the ongoing disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, the 84-year-old mother of Savannah Guthrie, continues. Authorities still searching for Nancy Guthrie. We just heard in the last hour or so from the Pima County Sheriff, that's in Arizona. Their office is leading the investigation into the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. So far have not identified any potential suspects, at least publicly, and they still so far have not located Nancy Guthrie. Time is of the essence. Authorities say she needs a medication that she takes once every day. She's now been missing since at least Sunday morning when she was reported missing. Savannah Guthrie, the Today Show anchor and daughter of Nancy Guthrie, asking for prayers for their family, asking for supporters to pray that her mother, Nancy Guthrie, is found. Authorities continue to search for Nancy Guthrie. We're also following an ongoing cold case that has now gone to trial in Athens, Clark County. That is the case of Tara Baker, who in 2001, as a 23-year-old UGA law student, was found dead. The case went cold for decades. Prosecutors have now brought murder charges against a man who has pleaded not guilty. That case began in Clark County Superior Court yesterday with opening statements. It continues today. We will bring you a live look inside the courtroom in just a little bit. And we are also following a big development in Georgia politics in the Republican primary race for governor. Rick Jackson, a healthcare entrepreneur, a deep-pocketed healthcare entrepreneur, a longtime conservative donor, has stepped out of the donor side of the political ledger and has become a candidate himself. Today, launching what came to many as a surprise bid for the governor's mansion. He joins a GOP governor primary that already includes 3 prominent statewide candidates. Rick Jackson entering with only a few months to go before the May primary, promising to spend what his campaign is describing as an initial $40 million on an ad blitz to introduce Georgia voters to the newly announced candidate, Rick Jackson. We'll continue to follow the GOP primary race and the Democratic primary race and all of the twists and turns that this midterm season of Georgia politics continues to deliver. We're going to turn now, though, to our Molly Oak, who has been following developments at the Fulton County Jail facility. Molly joining us now live in the 11Alive Plus Streaming Center. Molly, you have been following developments and troubling developments out of the Fulton County Jail and the Rice Street facility for as long as I've known you and as long as you've been here at 11Alive. What's the latest?
It's definitely been a hot topic, so to speak, and it's one that pulls a lot of focus from those in our community because there are so many people focusing in on what's happening with the jail. It's a big portion of our community. Right now, the latest is coming from the ACLU. They had a press conference this morning where they released their newest report about the Fulton County Jail, focusing on overcrowding. This is not the first time we've seen the Fulton County Jail face scrutiny publicly from different figures, ACLU being one of them. This is the third of 3 reports, actually, Zach, that they've released. They had one in 2022 and one in 2023. So 2 years later, they're coming out with this new 2025 report.
What were their big findings in this latest report?
The biggest thing it's focusing on is overcrowding. A lot of the focus that I have seen as I'm poring over this 30-plus page report is that they're focusing on how the county and the cities are treating misdemeanor crimes. One of the big recommendations that they said was, is there any way we can use citations in lieu of arrests for certain misdemeanor offenses to try to keep people out of the jail, throwing a lot of stats at us of X amount of people are facing misdemeanors with minor charges, minor fees, that we could potentially divert them somewhere else.
And it's important to remember as well when we're having this conversation about the jail, most detainees in a jail facility have not yet gone to trial. They have not been convicted. They are in jail pre-trial either because they have been denied bond or they have been granted bond by a judge but are unable to afford that bond. So we are talking about a population of detainees who have not yet had their day in court, at least insofar as a trial, either a bench trial before a judge or a trial before a jury. Molly, have Fulton County leaders offered any response to this report at this point? I know it's early.
They haven't. The ACLU and those with ACLU, which they were part of a bigger group called Community Over Cages Coalition, they said that they reached out to commissioners. They haven't heard anything back from them yet. I spoke with Fulton County Sheriff's Office. They said they were aware of the report. They hadn't been able to pore over the report yet, so have not gotten a statement in response from them yet either. They are no stranger to knowing that the jail has faced scrutiny. They also were speaking with me over the weekend when we saw flooding at the jail because of a pipe leak.
Something like 70,000 gallons of water?
Potentially even more than 70,000 gallons of water. I don't know if you all saw the videos, but you saw that water pouring through the ceilings at the jail. So it's not the first time the jail has had issues or faced, as I said, public scrutiny. It's not even in the past couple of days.
And we're looking at these images released by the Fulton County Sheriff's Office of this water leak over the weekend. Molly, you and I, I was here in studio. You were covering this. We talked about it on Saturday. This water leak, authorities say, did not impact detainees' cells, but it did impact a good chunk of the administrative wing, I believe, of the building.
That's the most important part that I want to make clear, because when I walked into the jail on Saturday, it was freezing in there. Now, full disclosure, they had to have we were in the lobby, they had the doors open because they had people pulling in a truckload of over 100 fans to eventually dry it out. But we were all still in our beanies, full coats, scarves, gloves, and you could see your breath inside the jail.
And we were in the midst of that winter weather.
Correct. Yes, it was on Saturday. So the important thing to note is that's how it felt in the lobby. They assured us that while the power had to be off for a little bit, it had since been restored in the housing units. The leak did not affect the housing units of the jail, but it did affect certain areas, including the servers, which they just put a bunch of money in with commissioners recently. The lobby, where they have all of the security screening equipment, got soaking wet. So we're looking at potentially a high price tag for fixes.
And that has been the undercurrent of this conversation between Fulton County Sheriff Pat Labatt, Fulton County commissioners, over what are the potential solutions to the jail's ongoing challenges and what is the price tag. And that has been a split point between some Fulton County leaders in the commission and the sheriff. Molly, we could continue this conversation for a long time, and we will, but right now we're going to let you go because I know you've got to pour over that, I think you said 30-plus page ACLU report. Molly Oak, thank you very much.
Things we will continue to look into.
Yes,
Zach,
we will.
Thanks.
Thanks, Molly. And we're going to turn now to this live picture once again of Blue Ridge on your Tuesday afternoon at about 3:09 and change. We're getting ready for the late afternoon hours, but no real rush hour concerns in Blue Ridge. Things are looking pretty quiet there. And you hear her, you know her. It's Melissa Nord, not worried about rush hour in Blue Ridge. And you know what, Melissa?
It's a great little town.
That's why people go there.
It's so lovely.
That's
up
why
there.
people go there. And it is
gone,
beautiful.
though.
You're up in the mountains. It's a great spot.
Right.
And the snow is gone.
The snow is gone. There's a lot of salt everywhere. The roads. I mean, have you noticed kind of the haze over the city today?
Yeah.
I think it's because everybody's driving over all that brine and salt on the roads.
You think it's getting kicked up in the air a little bit?
Yeah. It was like a little bit murky outside this morning. But look now, I want to show you sunshine because it's only going to be here a short while longer. I'm tracking rain on the way in for your Tuesday evening, Tuesday night, and into Wednesday. Going to be a wet commute tomorrow morning, finally washing that salt down into the storm drains. But what a warm day it's ended up being. Not warm by all-time standards, but warm by this week's standards. We were in the 20s on Saturday, 30s on Sunday, 40s yesterday. Now we're up to 59 degrees. So it feels great, but you can see on radar just about to Chattanooga, Lookout Mountain, we've got some rain moving in. That's all with the front, and that rain pushes in here this evening, overnight, and into tomorrow morning. So I just want to show you the next 12 hours for us as my graphics slowly churn through. They've been used a lot in the last month.
They've been working hard, Melissa. You know, you guys, the meteorologists and the meteorological technology.
Yeah, the technology. It needs caffeine. Okay, so you see there by 8 o'clock tonight, rain back in Atlanta, and then we see the rain lasting through the overnight. Now, this is going to be a nuisance category event for us. It's not high impact. I do not expect thunderstorms. I do not expect it to be pouring rain, but light to at times moderate rain. Here's the forecast track showing you that moving into the metro after 6 o'clock this evening, and then it's here with us, kind of on and off, rainfall through the overnight. It's not going to be gone first thing tomorrow morning. Models are now hinting a second wave of moisture works up that slowly moving front. So Wednesday morning ends up being kind of wet for that morning commute. I expect wet roadways. You're going to get a free car wash out of it. But it's about a ½ inch of rain. And we have a drought, so we'll take that. But that's the next change in our weather that we're tracking here for the middle of the week. Behind that, there is a bit of a temperature cool down, but tomorrow, as the rain is still working through, we'll manage to make it to about 53 degrees in the afternoon. So you can see there about an average of ½ inch of rain coming out of this system. Planner for tomorrow. Again, the bars are going to take a second to populate because it's working on overtime here. We'll be tracking the rain in the morning. Those rain chances taper off as we head into the afternoon. And then we're going to be smooth sailing into the weekend. And I want to show you your weekend forecast because this is a big difference from last weekend, the weekend before that, the weekend before that. We've had 3 weekends in a row of winter weather and cold temperatures. This weekend looks great by 2026 standards. 56 on Saturday, a little chilly out there in the morning. Sunday, 60 degrees.
How beautiful.
I think the last time we were up to 60, besides today, we're like right at 60, was probably early January.
You know, I think we have earned it. And
Yeah.
even when I look at the low there on Sunday of 36 and sunny feels very different.
That's as warm as it got to Sunday.
36 and raining on us and
yeah.
cold and gross. Not that we have equal love for all the different weather patterns. This is better.
We'll take it.
We'll
It's
definitely
a
take it.
win for all parents and outdoor lovers alike.
Melissa, on behalf of everybody who was ready for some good weather, thank you for bringing it to us.
You're welcome. Right after Groundhog Day.
It's that's right. And we have Weather Person's Appreciation Day coming up too, don't we?
Yeah.
It's a
Thursday.
It's a big week for weather. Thanks, Melissa. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back after this.
Thank you.
Welcome back in. We are talking right now at 3:15 on your Tuesday afternoon about a topic that I suspect you have heard a lot about already. That's data centers, especially here in Georgia. It has been a booming industry. If you live in many chunks of our state, you have likely seen these massive construction projects that lead to massive warehouse-sized data centers. They power the modern internet. Supporters say they bring jobs, they help develop developing technology and provide the backbone and the infrastructure required for this next wave of technological development. Critics have argued that they present a drain on natural resources and environmental hazards. Our Savannah Levins took a deeper look at the growing data center industry here in Georgia back in December. This is what she found.
Georgia is positioned to become a major hub for the digital infrastructure age. As the debate around the data center boom grows louder, the prevailing question is, at what cost?
Order, please! Order! This is a moral issue.
We've covered heated meetings, protests, and town halls. Data centers at the center of it all. But let's take a 30,000-foot view. After all, data centers are needed to power all the things we need and want to do online. So what's the big deal? Let's first look at the environmental concerns. A large data center may use upwards of 200 million gallons of water each year to cool off all that tech. In 2023, federal reports put that total around 17 billion gallons. Experts say that number could double in 5 years. As for your wallets, many worry the massive amounts of electricity these centers consume could mean residents end up footing the bill when utilities inevitably need to expand. Over the summer, Georgia Power agreeing to freeze its base rates through 2028. There are also concerns the centers will take up land that could be better used for things like housing or green space. And most recently, a surge in fears of secrecy. 11Alive Investigates obtained a copy of an NDA Google presented to commissioners in Monroe County ahead of a proposed data center build there, which would have bound the county to keep confidential information that could be pertinent to the public interest, like power and water usage.
I'm recommending that y'all do not enter into this agreement.
The commissioners this week unanimously declining to sign it, but it's opened up questions about whether these NDAs are or will be standard in other parts of the state. While residents in counties like DeKalb are largely and loudly opposing data center builds, the truth is they're already here. According to datacentermap.com, Georgia is already home to 163 data centers, 146 of those in Atlanta. Local governments now face a big challenge, deciding what rules to put in place and what questions to ask, as thousands of acres of Georgia land are eyed and prepped to house this growing need.
That's our Savannah Levins giving us the breakdown of this developing trend line in Georgia, in our economy, and in our politics, both at the state level and the local level. We are joined now by State Senator Rashawn Kemp, Democrat of Atlanta. Can you hear me, sir?
I can hear you, Zach. How are you?
I'm good. It's always good to talk to you. We appreciate your time, Senator. Let's start with this. You have recently introduced legislation that you have titled the Data Center Transparency Act. Can you tell us about this bill you're proposing?
Yeah, so Senate Bill 421 is a bipartisan data center bill. And it's a bill, whether you want a data center in your community or you don't, it's one that folks can support because it speaks to exactly what you all just raised in your piece there, that we have local municipalities that are going into NDAs in which these mega companies are trying to hide how much water and energy that's going to be consumed with the development of these data centers. And so it just simply says that, hey, you can have a data center, you can even go into an NDA, but you should not be holding this information to yourself behind closed doors. The community should be able to know how much water and electricity is going to be required to power these data centers.
Senator, let me ask you a question I suspect advocates of data center development might want to ask if they were a part of this conversation. What would you say to potential criticism that a bill like this could impede the ability of a private company to contract and negotiate in private with a potential entity that is going to be on the other side of a development deal?
Look, as you all just shared, this is a very tense subject that is occurring right now. And I would rather err on the side of consumer protection and informing consumers and our constituents about the impact that data centers will have than worry about trying to protect a secret water usage or the impact that a data center is going to have on our power grid. It does not. It honestly, it levels the playing field. So one cannot argue that, well, one company is going to have a leg up over another, because it's going to be a requirement for all data centers that come into the state of Georgia from now on to disclose those energy uses in our communities.
Senator, do you think, and obviously you're keeping a close eye on this topic, you've introduced this legislation, as you heard from our Savannah 11s in that piece just a moment ago, well over 100 data centers already in place here in Georgia. I suspect more are in the development phase. Do you think the state is doing enough to regulate this growing industry here?
Absolutely not. As with AI technology, we're a little bit behind the ball. And, sometimes that's how it works with government. We're quite slow. The world continues to move when we're not in session. And so I think this is a great opportunity for us to come together in a bipartisan way and address this growing concern that many folks have. Georgia is a hotbed for data center growth, and we have to be able to regulate them just like we do anything else. And understanding that there is a need. We all have our phones, and we all are going to be using AI technology at some point. So the need for data storage is going to grow, but I feel like we can do it in a sensible way. And obviously, the government has a responsibility to make sure that we're protecting consumers through the process.
Senator, let me ask you two last questions here, and they're sort of mirror images of each other, but I want to ask you them one at a time to make sure you have a chance to address what I think are the two big constituencies in this conversation when we talk about data centers. The first is the data center industry, the people who are developing these projects. To those folks who may be watching this legislation make its way through the state capitol and maybe would have some worries from their perspective, what would you want to say to them?
Look, at the end of the day, when people have more information, they're more prone to hear you out and even possibly support you come into our communities. The concern that occurs is when consumers feel like you are hiding something, that makes them more prone to fight against. And I think that the more information that we can put out, the more willing folks will be able to come to the table and have a conversation and not have those, very tense, public hearings that are occurring across the state. And, ultimately, you're going to have more attorneys recommending to local municipalities, don't sign into this because it's hiding information from our public, and nobody wants to be put in a position where it feels like we're hiding something. So I think it ultimately is a win-win situation for both data center developers and our community.
And Senator, you dovetail right into the last question I want to ask you, because obviously I asked you about responding to what I suspect would be the position of some data center operators. Want to make sure you get a chance to respond to some citizens of Georgia. As you have seen, as we have seen, data center development has been a flashpoint in some heated municipal meetings, county commission meetings, city council meetings. There are people who have deep concerns about the potential for data centers to be moving into their neck of the woods. People, some of them, don't want to see that happen. To somebody who is opposed to data center development in Georgia and sees this bill be introduced, what would you say to them?
We hear you. I represent Atlanta, and you all shared that the vast majority of data centers are being developed in Metro Atlanta. I represent Sandy Springs all the way down to Palmetto and Chattahoochee Hills, and in between there have been data centers that have been built. There's one literally being built 5 minutes from my home, and this is a hot topic here at the Capitol. We get pulled to the ropes on a daily basis from folks that are concerned about data centers, and I tell them the same that I tell everyone. This isn't an anti-data center bill. It's not a pro-data center bill. This is a pro-consumer bill that is just making sure you have the information that you need to make sound decisions and hold elected officials accountable. If you don't want data centers in your community, the least you will have is the information to understand the strain that they may bring to your power grid or to water usage in your community. So ultimately, the message is we hear you. And this message on this bill is we hear you in a bipartisan way, in an environment in which that is not very popular now, but we definitely hear you, and we're going to try to do something about it.
State Senator Rashawn Kemp, always appreciate your time, and this is a topic I am sure we will continue to discuss, because you're right, data centers are a real flashpoint in our state politics, municipal politics, and national politics right now. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you, Zach. Have a good one.
You too. We're going to turn now to live images out of Athens, Clark County. You're taking a look inside the courtroom in Clark County Superior Court, where the cold case murder trial in the killing of Tara Baker, the 23-year-old UGA law student who was killed in 2001, continues. In day 2 of this trial, it began yesterday with opening statements. We are now into day 2 of this trial that has been more than 2 decades in the making. The case had gone cold, and then it heated up. Prosecutors say they know who is responsible for the death of Tara Baker. They have accused Edric Faust of committing the crime. Faust has pleaded not guilty. This is a case that has taken a long time to get here. Our Marissa Sarback has been following all the developments from inside Clark County Superior Court today for us. You're back with us again here in the streaming center. We talked with you about an hour ago. What has changed since then?
So about an hour ago, we were still on recess, coming back. Court was coming into session. We're now on our 4th testimony. The state has their latest person that they've called to the stand. That is one of the detectives in this case. So far today, we've heard from the medical examiner. We've heard from Tara Baker's best friend, 911 call center operator, and now we're hearing from the detective. This is lengthy testimony. I just checked. He is still on the stand right now, going through questioning to try and figure out and piece together for the jury what exactly transpired that day in January 2001.
Have there been any singular moments that have stood out to you as ones that you suspect would be particularly impactful for the jury so far?
Well, because it's such an old case, this is a cold case from 2001, it's kind of hard to bring the jury back to it. It's not something that's recent. So something that they've done, the detective has at least, and the prosecution, they've brought up images from that day when they were doing this investigation at the house. So I think bringing the jury visually into this to show them and set the scene, that has been something that will really stick with them.
What has the defense, if anything, said in cross-examination so far?
So the defense in cross-examination has been similar to their opening statements. What they're really trying to argue here is that their defendant, Edric Faust, is not guilty because they say that there's no eyewitnesses, there's no fingerprints. They say there's no direct evidence in this case at all. And they, in opening statements, pointed the finger back at Chris Melton, who was Tara Baker's boyfriend at the time. He was initially a prime suspect for police.
Melton, who has not been charged in this case, obviously prosecutors believe that Faust is responsible, not Melton. Faust pleading not guilty. This was a cold case for a long time, Marissa. Have you gotten any indication of some of the challenges that investigators have faced along the way? We had a conversation in here yesterday with Daryl Cohen, who's a former prosecutor, not involved with this case, but he described just how far forensic technology has come in the last few decades. Have prosecutors or investigators given any indication of how that has helped their case?
DNA evidence has been pivotal, and it's really the prosecution's reason for being able to argue this case this many years later, because they're talking about this DNA technology that in 2024 allowed them to reopen this rape kit and retest it, and they say that's what's actually led them, that DNA evidence that they found has led them directly to Edric Faust. Now, they're saying that, get this, a 1 in 800 quadrillion chance it is not Edric Faust after doing that DNA test.
That is a figure that I'm sure is going to resonate with the jury. I suspect the defense is going to do their best to present their side of the story here as well. And it is important to remember, an arrest, even going to trial, that's sort of step 1 of this case. You got to get to probable cause to arrest. You've got to reach the much higher bar to convict of beyond a reasonable doubt. Marissa, we talked a lot about the technical aspects of this case, the challenges for both the state, the prosecution, and the defense. But at the heart of this is a 23-year-old girl, Tara Baker, at law school in her first year, prime of her life, with her whole life ahead of her, and she never got to experience that. She was killed in 2001. Has her family, her friends, have they given any indication of what it means to them just to finally be at this moment where they are in a courtroom?
Yeah, for them to be in there for opening statements, I think was huge, and to finally get to that point of this trial opening for them, and hopefully coming to a close at some point in the next few weeks. It's important, but we've even seen her best friend take the stand in this case. That best friend is the one who said, "I spoke to her. I was the last person to speak to her. I was the last person to see her the night before the murder, and also Zach, the night before her 24th birthday. She was in the law library with her at UGA. Actually, we do have that audio if we can take a listen to some of her testimony earlier on the stand."
Were you supposed to do anything when you got home?
Yes, I was supposed to call her when I got home, and I did not.
All right. And so did you receive a phone call that evening?
Yes, she called me about 9:30, maybe 9:45, and then she admonished me, scolded me because I had failed to call her, but I just didn't mean anything bad. I just forgot.
Okay. Do you need a cup of water or a moment?
Have some. Thank you so much.
There's some tissues over there beside you if you see them and need them. Is that the last time you ever talked to Tara?
Yeah. I think the last thing she ever said to me was that I said hello, and she said, "You did not call me." And I said, "I know, I'm so sorry." And she said, "But you're okay?" I said, "I am." And she said, "All right, I'll talk to you tomorrow." And that was kind of it.
So when you say I'll talk to you tomorrow, this is Thursday night.
Yes.
So tomorrow would be Friday, January 19th, 2001. Is that right?
Yes.
Testimony that we heard throughout the trial so far. Again, just to recap, Zach, we heard from the medical examiner, we heard from a 911 call center operator, a detective for the prosecution is now on the stand right now, but that emotional testimony from her best friend certainly hitting home for a lot of people.
Just gut-wrenching to hear that from the stand, and somebody who has carried those memories with her for 25 years, now finally getting the opportunity to tell that story in front of a jury in Clark County. This is a trial that we're told could take several weeks. Marissa, I know you're going to be on top of it throughout all of this. Thank you for your reporting here.
Thank you.
We're going to turn now. We have a look at a big year in Georgia sports coming up, with Reggie Chapman giving us a look into all that we can expect in this early year as we head into baseball season, World Cup season. We've got a new NFL season coming up. Before you know it, we got the Super Bowl, and then it's going to be the off season, but you know what? It comes up so fast. Reggie's going to break it all down for us. We're going to take a quick break. Reggie will be back right after this. Welcome back into the 11Alive Plus Streaming Center. I'm Zach Merchant. It is 3:35 on Tuesday afternoon, and we've got some sports news to talk about. Our Reggie Chapman is standing by, but we're going to go first to our Cheryl Preheim, a seasoned veteran of covering multiple Olympic Games. She is in Italy for us right now as we are just a few days out from the start of these Winter Games, Milan Cortina Winter Games, and the preparation work is still underway. Italy is transforming ahead of these Winter Games. Crews are still working through the snow. You see the picture on your screen here. If you're a winter athlete, you want it to feel like winter out there, right? But if you're somebody who is preparing for the games, who is working to get ready, the snow can pose some challenges. Cheryl Preheim shares how the games are helping Milan shine with new Olympic glory as they close out this window before the games kick off on Friday.
From the rooftops here to the Dolomite Mountains in Cortina, Italy is ready to welcome the world. And travel expert Rick Steves says it's not just the Olympic venues that will capture people's imaginations. It's really the culture and lifestyle of this unforgettable city.
Milan, Italy isn't just a city, it's a pulse. A powerhouse of fashion, finance, and art. And it's an all-time favorite destination for one of the world's most famous travelers.
I love Italy.
Rick Steves is a pro. He's visited Italy at least 50 times. In 1976, he turned his love for traveling into a career by making Italy and other European countries more accessible to the average traveler.
Life is a theater, life is a game, life is a food fest. It's Italians really know how to live well. When you go to Milan, you've got a chance to go to the great Duomo, the cathedral, so many spires, and you hike around on the roof, and on a crispy day you can see beautiful Alps in the distance.
That's where the Dolomites, 5 hours north of Milan, play host to the skiing and sliding events at these Winter Games. It's also an area where, no surprise, Rick went hiking just weeks before our interview. He says the size of the Olympic apparatus will make travel in this small mountain village a real challenge.
The infrastructure will not handle the massive crowds as everybody converges on Italy. Anybody that thinks they can zip from an event in Milan over to an event in Cortina, they're dreaming.
When Rick travels, he loves to explore and immerse himself in the day-to-day culture.
You feel the weave of society as you stroll in the evening. There's a little rough edge in a big city, and the passeggiata is nicknamed Struccio, which is the big rub. And people rub each other, and the men and the women check each other out. And instead of saying buonasera, they say bella, beautiful.
These Winter Games will make Milan feel like the center of the world for the month of February, and bringing cultures together is what Rick Steves loves most.
When you go to the Olympics, you're reminded it's a big, beautiful world. I love the thought that you can learn a little bit about your own city, your own country, by leaving it and looking at it from a distance. And I learn a lot about how the United States could be better when I go to a place like Italy.
One thing Rick says he loves the most is that the venues built for these games will be used after the Olympics. It's something we're seeing more and more of in the Olympics, but think about this. It's like the common area in Atlanta, Centennial Olympic Park, that's now been enjoyed for 30 years since we hosted the games in 1996. Reporting in Milan, Italy at the Winter Olympics, Cheryl Preheim, 11Alive News.
Boy, it is hard to watch a story like that and not feel excited for the Winter Games. They kick off this Friday. Reggie Chapman is going to be following along with us, all of us eagerly awaiting the kickoff of these Winter Games. I grew up in Colorado for a while when I was a kid, loved skiing. I see the snow falling and the venues getting ready. You know, the stoke is up right now.
You get chills, which I guess is, no pun intended, right?
Pun intended. It's okay.
Look, I'll tell you, man. Look, I'm really excited about the Olympics, man, especially on 11Alive. I think it's always awesome that we get a chance to be able to showcase that. But these are the best athletes on earth. And especially the Winter Games, where we get to see some sports where, maybe we don't see them super often here in Atlanta where it's a little bit warm. I'm really excited about it.
And you talk about that, and we want to transition to the NFL and some big news for the Atlanta Falcons in just a moment. But Reggie, you do point out, when you talk about the Olympics, we often see athletes who, for them, this is the biggest stage. There isn't a real thriving pro league in their sport. Some of them do. There is a professional figure skating and alpine ski racing and things like that. I'm sure there's a pro curling league, but it's not on.
It's not this.
It's not on TV every weekend.
Right.
This is the pinnacle for folks once every 4 years to get this opportunity in the world stage. I mean, you cover sports, you cover athletes. How much does that mean to them?
I mean, it's incredibly important to them. I mean, you work so hard to just get small moments. It's not only it's every 4 years. It's like if you're working all this time for what's probably like a minute and a half of actual work, right?
And you get to suit up with your nation's flag on the jersey.
It's unbelievable. It's really the coolest, one of the coolest things. And like all people always say, sports are the thing that kind of unifies us and brings people together. And especially when you start talking about countries involved. I know we've got the World Cup coming up in a couple of months here in Atlanta. Same thing here with the Olympics. It is something that creates a sense of pride that people love.
And we are so looking forward to that Olympics coverage right here on 11Alive. It's going to kick off on Friday, the official start of the Winter Games. We've got to talk some football news here, though, as well, Reggie.
Yeah.
NFL season, it never stops. It never sleeps. Obviously, we're gearing up. We're excited for the Super Bowl this
on
Sunday.
11Alive.
On 11Alive right
now.
here. So we've got the Olympics. We have got the Super Bowl.
Yep.
We got NBA games.
Yep. The NBA All-Star Game is coming up in a couple of weeks.
It's a good time to be hanging out with us here on 11Alive. But let's talk about the Falcons. They are, unfortunately, not playing this Sunday.
No.
Their season's over.
Yep.
They've gone through an organizational reshuffle.
Big one.
Over the last, all these big announcements have been within the last couple weeks.
Yep.
Today, another big piece of this new organizational structure was officially unveiled. Tell us about who we're talking about here, Reggie.
Well, it might be the biggest piece, and it's also hopefully kind of the last piece that we were really waiting for, right? Ian Cunningham has been announced as the new general manager of the Atlanta Falcons. He's a guy that comes in after spending the last couple of years with the Chicago Bears as their assistant general manager. He comes from a couple other. He's really the cool thing about him is he's worked his way up into his position. He was a player personnel guy with the Eagles and actually won a world title with them. He was the area scout for the Ravens when they won the Super Bowl as well. So he's seen winning. He's worked through organizations that have, you talk about the Eagles and the Ravens. These are two of the franchises that have been, some of the best and most well-run throughout the entire NFL. And then you talk about his time with the Bears. They created that position for him to be the assistant general manager to help rebuild that team. And we watched that team go from one of the laughingstocks in the NFL, a team that had not been to the playoffs for a long time, to a team that was only a couple of plays away from advancing to an NFC championship
And
game.
they did that in Chicago in short order.
Very quickly.
I remember even this season having moments where I tuned in and I'd see a Bears game on the schedule and think, there's a Bears game. And I'd have to remind myself, no, this is a very different franchise than even just a few years ago.
It's a total change, and the cool thing about it is that he was a part of that change, so they're hoping that he brings all of that experience and all of the lessons that he learned from those experiences back here to Atlanta to help change the culture and bring this place to the next direction.
Reggie, let me ask you this last question. We're getting the warning from producer Gabby, who knew that we would just get a little chatty here because I always love talking to you here.
Yeah.
But you talk about Ian Cunningham and his journey as a real sort of football pro, working his way up through the front offices of these successful franchises. He's now in the front office as the GM for the Falcons. He is joined now with former quarterback Matt Ryan, who is a football guy through and through, but his experience was all on the field. Is this going to be a situation where they mesh really well together, or are people worried there may be some conflict?
I think that the big reason they made all these major sweeping changes is to create more alignment. That's kind of the word that feels like it's been passed around with this franchise, to create more alignment from the top all the way down. And there was a lot of talk about how Ian meshes with both Kevin Stefanski and Matt Ryan, how they all see the future, how they see the direction of this franchise. And so to answer your question, I think it's a perfect setup for what they want to do. They've reshaped what this organization looks like. They've reshaped the direction that they want to go. And they feel like they've got guys, part of this organization, that have the same vision of bringing this place back to a point. And also a franchise with people in it that care about this team. Of course, Matt Ryan was the starting quarterback for this team. And Ian Cunningham actually grew up rooting for the Falcons, which is a crazy thing, right? He's from the area. His dad was the VP of marketing for the '96 Olympics. He's got a brick in Centennial. I mean, the guy is from here. He's a Falcons fan growing up, and an opportunity to save his franchise that he loved growing up is such a big deal for him.
We're out of time here. You know what's fun, Reggie? When we have this conversation, we talk about the Falcons, who are so beloved in not just Atlanta, but across Georgia, who have also done a little bit of heartbreaking to some fans over the last couple years. When we have this conversation now, it is new, it is fresh, people are excited again. I feel that, when I'm out, people are talking about the Falcons a little more with the smiles on their faces. No Super Bowl appearance this year.
No.
Next year, who's to say?
Who's to say? You never know. A lot of question marks with the quarterback position, but it feels like they've made all the rules or all the things this offseason that make you believe they're at least taking steps in that right direction.
And got a chance for an improved season.
Correct.
Maybe
I mean,
a playoff experience.
Something. I think they've done all the right things
something.
and make them go in the right direction. So we'll see next year. It'll be a good opportunity with Kevin Stefanski leading the way.
Reggie Chapman, as always, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Zach.
We're going to take a quick break now as we contemplate the future of the Atlanta Falcons and dream big dreams for them. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back into the 11Alive Plus streaming center, where we are about to close out this hour with an important and uplifting story. The Carter Center, at the guidance of former President and former First Lady Jimmy and Rosalind Carter, decades ago took on the challenge of eradicating a debilitating disease known as guinea worm. The good news here is that that ancient disease is now closer than ever to being fully wiped off the face of the earth. Our Caitlin Ross had a great conversation with Adam Weiss, who is a program director at the Carter Center, on this big announcement from the Carter Center and their work eradicating guinea worm disease. That conversation happened here in the streaming studio not long ago. Let's listen in.
This is really incredible news. The Carter Center says there were fewer than a dozen human cases of guinea worm reported last year. That's worldwide, the lowest number ever recorded. Joining us now to explain how we got here and all the work that went into it is Adam Weiss. He's the director for the Carter Center's guinea worm eradication program. Thank you so much for being here, Adam. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Now, 10 cases worldwide in 2025. This is an incredible accomplishment. It's the lowest number ever. Can you put that number into perspective for us? Why is this such a historic moment?
Well, this is a really historic moment for the world because in 1986, there were an estimated 3.5 million people with guinea worm every single year. So the fact that there were only 10 people on a planet of almost 8 billion people with this particular disease just showcases how amazing this accomplishment has been.
It really is an accomplishment. And what would you say that the turning point was?
Well, I think the turning point in many respects was the vision and leadership of President Carter. He put guinea worm disease on the map. It is one of 21 neglected tropical diseases that most of us in the United States and many high-income countries simply don't know about. So the fact that he raised awareness and then also brought together a team of global experts to do something about it, working hand in hand with communities being the most important part of the equation.
Yeah, this is such a legacy project for him. And as we remember him and appreciate his work, can you just speak to the importance of that, all of he did to really bring awareness to this?
Yeah, well, certainly I wouldn't know about guinea worm and the millions of amazing people that I've come across over the years. President Carter was amazing in his approach to understand problems, but not understand it just from the academic sense, but really listening to the people. And that was one of his amazing attributes. There's a lot of clips of him traveling around the world, and oftentimes people might say, oh, it's a photo op. There was never a photo op for President Carter. He leaned in, he listened, he tried to understand, and then he brought to bear his wisdom, his connections and networks to bring people who want to make the world a better place together, and then work with the community members, with local governments, to really empower and enable them. It was never about his legacy. It was always about the legacy of the people, taking care of themselves, solving their own problems, but knowing that at times they need a little bit of assistance.
Really beautifully said. I love that. For people who aren't familiar with guinea worm disease, can you just talk about the impact that just one case can have on a person, a family, a community?
Yeah, I hope nobody's eating food right now, particularly spaghetti, but it is a 3-foot-long parasite worm that comes out of anywhere on the human body, and it can take 4 to 6 weeks for that 3-foot-long worm to be extracted from the body. So you can imagine if you have this worm coming out, you can't walk properly, you lose your appetite, kids aren't going to school, people aren't going to their farms. Guinea worm is often known as the disease of the empty granary, because people were not able to farm their fields and provide food for their families. So just one case can mean devastation for their family and even for their communities. And so it's really important that even though there are only 10 cases, we still have to lean in and do everything we can to prevent the disease from coming back again. And I would just note that through the campaign, there's been 100 million people prevented from getting guinea worm disease, which again kind of talks to the scale of this global initiative.
Yeah, that really does speak to the scale. You said there are 10 cases, though, worldwide. Why are those final cases so difficult to eradicate?
Well, most of the cases are found far beyond the end of the road. There's a dearth of infrastructure in many of the countries where guinea worm still exists. And so just making sure that there are basic services for the people is a challenge. It would be a challenge for any government. Given the context, there's often internal insecurity, civil war in places like Ethiopia, in South Sudan. Local insecurity, again, can make it difficult even for community members to do their part to educate each other about the disease, to distribute cloth filters and pipe filters to help prevent infection. And so it just makes it really challenging for anybody to operate in those environments.
Yeah, that sounds really difficult. And I know another difficult layer of this has been animal infections, particularly in dogs. That's become a major challenge. How did that change the strategy, and why is stopping animal transmission just as important?
So it was definitely a game changer, but not a game ender, in the sense that it wasn't something that the global programs had seen on a large scale. There were errant reports of a dog infection at a time, but then once it went away in humans, it was gone. But in Chad in 2012, we started to see annual infections in domestic dogs in particular, and it really forced the national programs and the global program to reset our own thinking about how we approach the disease. Historically, it had been a human-centric disease, but now we had to look at it from more of a broader, holistic One Health paradigm. And so that made us, again, understand the ecosystem, the ecology of how the disease functions, but also the human behavior and how that's interrelated with animal behavior. And so designing interventions hand in hand with communities that could address transmission from dogs entering water. How are you going to prevent that from happening in a village where people don't tie up their dogs during the day or at night? They're just kind of free roaming around the community. And so it required a lot of behavior change and a lot of discussion and understanding about the nature of the disease, which again forced us to all reconsider how it operated. But more importantly, the communities had to rethink their own approach to the disease.
Yeah, it just sounds like there's so many moving parts there, so many different things to consider. And this really relies heavily on community-based volunteers. So can you talk about how important that trust is in the community in really eradicating this disease?
Yeah, I think we've seen on the global health landscape here in the US and around the world, if you don't have trust, you really have nothing. And with guinea worm, it's the same scenario. If communities don't believe you when you're sharing information, when you're engaging in discussion, they question whether you're following through on whatever your commitments were, they're not going to uphold their end of the bargain. So it's fundamental to the work that we do. Certainly, I personally believe it's fundamental to humanity that we rebuild trust with each other and with ourselves about how we're approaching the challenges that we face, both near and far.
Yeah, such an important point there. The World Health Assembly passed a new resolution in 2025 to really help accelerate eradication. Practically speaking, what does that resolution mean? How does it help?
The resolution really reflects the high-level political commitment to eradicating guinea worm. Again, it's very easy for us to say, there's only 10 cases, let's move on to the next thing. And that generally makes sense. But with a disease like guinea worm, it will come back if not addressed fully. Because there has not been adequate development across many of the communities that still have guinea worm, it will thrive in those environments. And again, it's a parasite, it wants to survive. So it's going to do whatever it can to maintain its life. And so that commitment that the heads of state, the ministers of health made back in May 2025, really enshrined their vision. It's no longer just President Carter's vision. It's no longer even the community members' vision. It's the entire government of these nations to say, let's get it done. And other countries around the world are saying, hey, we're behind you 100% to see this through. And so the support that other nation states from around the world, whether fully aligned with all the global politics that are occurring now, they really coalesced behind this particular mission.
Yeah, I love that idea of really working together and making this be a partnership. What would getting to zero mean?
When I think about it, it's not what it means to me. It's what it means to the people that didn't have to get guinea worm disease. So the 100 million people we were talking about earlier, they never have to know what it's like to have that 3-foot long worm coming out of their body. And even with that,